I'm a clinical dietitian with Trinity Health, and I'd like to take you on a grocery store tour. So here we are in the produce section, and you really can't go wrong in the produce section. The biggest thing is to get lots of variety and lots of different colors. Fruits and vegetables give us lots of water and fiber and antioxidants and different vitamins and minerals. The recommendation is to make half of your plate be fruits and vegetables. Again, you really can't go wrong here. Sometimes people talk about wanting to get the non-GMO or the organic food items, which is absolutely fine if that's your choice, to get less pesticides and chemicals with your produce. Sometimes they can definitely be a lot more spendy, so if you aren't able to do that or don't want to do that, you can still get very, very healthy options of the regular produce section. And again, think about variety, lots of different colors, eat the rainbow, and try to get half your plate fruits and vegetables. So here we are in the bakery section. Sometimes people really like sweets. It's kind of one of their weaknesses, and we can still have these, but there's not a lot of need for any added sugar or added fat, which is the biggest concern with these items. Another thing that sometimes is in baked goods is trans fat, which is the fat that's worse for our heart. And so we want to try to cut that out completely if possible. So again, with these baked goods, a lot of added fat, added sugar, so trying to have them less often, or if we still have them quite often, having smaller amounts, maybe getting a donut whole instead of a donut, or sharing with someone so that we can reduce the amount of added fat and added sugar in our diet, which are the things that can contribute to more weight and more diseases later on in life. Here we are in one of the meat sections here at the deli. Lunch meat is a common thing that people often have in their meal plans. One of the issues with lunch meat is that it can be pretty high in sodium, usually not high in fat. Depends on the kind for cholesterol, but it can be very high in sodium. Here at the meat counter, you can see that it's already shaved for you, and there's no food label. You can ask the workers behind the counter if they have one of the whole pieces of meat to check the food label, and then the other deli section you can check the sodium on the label there. We'll talk about this more later, but when you look at sodium on food labels, if you can only remember one number, try to choose foods with less than 300 milligrams per serving. And this lunch meat can be very, very high in sodium, and so it's something that sometimes is really hard to fit into a meal plan when you're trying to reduce sodium, whether it's for high blood pressure or anything that you're trying to prevent. So this can be something that's hard to fit into our meal plan, and trying to find just a better option. So here we are in another meat section, and there's several things I want to talk about in this section. So first of all, I'm all about easy things to remember, and so my elevator speech, so that hopefully you can remember this information on meat, is specifically on cholesterol. So cholesterol is found in foods that formerly had a liver, because that's where the cholesterol is made. So if you think about foods such as like a banana doesn't have a liver, therefore it can't have any cholesterol. But animal products, animals have livers, so therefore they have cholesterol. And this rule of thumb doesn't apply to everything, but it's a good rule of thumb to kind of look at the general things that we eat. So the rule is the more feet, the more fat and cholesterol. So how many feet do cows and pigs have? 4. And chicken and turkey, 2, and fish, 0. So again, the more feet, the more fat and cholesterol. So if you look at what you normally eat and say, man, all I have is beef and pork, those are the 4-legged animals, try to revamp it a little bit so that you're having more of the 2 and 0-legged animals to get less fat and less cholesterol. A few specific things that I want to show you here is that when you're looking at food items for your protein choice for supper, usually one of the things we can look at to have a leaner choice is to have something that is a loin or a sirloin. That usually means a leaner cut of meat. And so when you're looking at a piece of steak or a roast, loin and sirloin is a good word to look for a leaner cut. Another item to look at is when you're looking at ground meats, whether it's beef or turkey, there's usually 2 numbers. It'll say 93/7 or 80/20. That first number means lean, and the second number means fat. So what we'd like is to have the first number be as high as possible, 93/7 or even 96/4, so that the first number is bigger, meaning it's more lean and a healthier option for you. The last thing I want to show you is chicken. So for chicken and turkey, sometimes people just assume because it's the less legged animals that it's going to be a healthier option. But as you can see, sometimes it's a dark meat, which is higher fat, higher cholesterol than the white meat, but also sometimes has a skin on it, which does add flavor and keep in moisture. And so a recommendation is to leave that skin on while you cook it and then take it off afterwards and not consume it. So you're using it to contain the moisture of the food while cooking, but not consuming it and getting extra fat and calories. One last thing I want to say about meat choices. You may have heard in the media about specifically red meat and smoked meats and their increased risk for colon cancer. We know that there is a link between red meat and smoked meats for colon cancer, but it's not that if you eat bacon once that you're automatically going to have colon cancer. It's a repetitive consumption of it and in large amounts. So again, don't be afraid of certain foods. Just think about the red meats and smoked meats that you eat, whether it's bacon or smoked salmon or lunch meat or beef roast. And again, trying to think about maybe a smaller portion of them and not as often to reduce your risk for colon cancer. Here I am in the vinegar section, one of the canned aisles, and I just want to specifically talk about vinegar because of its use for cooking that can add a lot of flavor without adding really any calories or sodium. Specifically here we have red wine vinegar. You can use balsamic vinegar, white wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar, all different kinds. And again, specifically great for adding flavor to food with very little calories and sodium. And some research supports its benefits for health as well. So here we are in the pasta type sauce section, and I specifically again want to talk about the sodium in canned items. So I've got two different sauces here, both Prego traditional pasta sauce. One is regular, one is lower sodium. And the first thing you want to do is check the serving size to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. And so both of these have half a cup as they're serving. The sodium on this one is 480 milligrams per half a cup, and the sodium on this one is 360 milligrams. So again, if you remember from before, we want to try to choose foods with less than 300 milligrams per serving or less if possible. This one still doesn't meet that guideline, but it's better than the 480. So sometimes it's about progress, not perfection, but trying to find items with less sodium. And sometimes they do have alternatives like this. Sometimes you'll find products that have a little heart on it that maybe was approved by the American Heart Association to try to help you with your shopping needs and find a more heart-healthy product. So here we are in the pasta section. A lot of people these days are really concerned about having little or no carbohydrate food or meal plans, and we still want to have carbohydrate foods. Some of us have too many, yes, but we want to make smart choices about the carbohydrates that we do purchase. So here I have two different kinds of pasta. This is kind of the regular pasta, and this is the whole wheat. Some people get confused about whole wheat and whole grain. Whole grain is kind of the bigger umbrella term, and whole wheat is just underneath that. So you can have whole grain rice, whole grain popcorn, whole grain wheat. And so when we look at pasta, that's something that you can do. Try to make half your grains whole grains. If you hate whole wheat pasta, then do whole wheat or whole grain cereal, or do brown rice. But the purpose for this is, one of the big things is to get more fiber. And so if you look per serving for both of these, the regular pasta has 2 grams of fiber, and the 100% whole wheat has 6 grams of fiber. Fiber helps with keeping us fuller longer. It helps with blood glucose control. It even helps with our heart health by helping to reduce cholesterol levels. So simple switch you can make to whole wheat or whole grain products such as whole wheat pasta. So here we are in the canned vegetables section. Sometimes people don't buy canned vegetables. They think that they are unhealthy. Fresh and frozen would be the first choice, but sometimes because of availability, because of where you live or the season, but also because of finances, sometimes we can't always afford the fresh produce. So sometimes what I recommend is a third fresh, a third frozen, a third canned, so that you still get good products but aren't breaking the bank by getting always fresh produce. If you do get canned vegetables, what you can do is, if you buy the regular, you can rinse it off and get rid of some of the sodium, or you can get reduced sodium options as well. So here's some green beans. The regular green beans with salt added per half cup is 290 milligrams of sodium, whereas the no salt added green beans per half cup is only 15. So it's just like if you had fresh green beans as far as sodium goes. Yes, anytime you cook vegetables, the more water you use, if you're steaming or cooking or processing like this, you do lose some nutrients. But again, it's still a vegetable, and so if finances are an issue or availability, these can be used. The flavor of the no salt added vegetables is going to be different than you're used to, so you might not like it just by itself, but if you add it into things like let's say you're making green bean casserole or something like that, then you can't tell the flavor difference as much, so this can be a great option. So here we are in the canned soup section. Sometimes canned soups are used in recipes such as the cream of mushroom or cream of chicken versions, or sometimes we just have a can of soup because it's simple and convenient for a quick meal. But unfortunately, the canned soups usually are a huge contributor to our sodium consumption, which again puts it at risk, us at risk for high blood pressure and risk for stroke and different things such as that. So here I have 2 different cream of mushroom soups. The regular version per half cup serving, again on sodium, is 870 milligrams of sodium, whereas the Healthy Request or Heart Smart one is only 410 milligrams of sodium per serving. So again, not to the 300 milligram per serving recommendation that we'd like, but still a huge improvement from this, more than half less the sodium in the Heart Smart version. So here we are in the spice section. I feel like when we are trying to reduce our sodium intake, we can eat very, very bland, not good tasting meals, but it doesn't have to be that way. And one way we can do that is by adding spices. I am not a very spicy food person, but spices doesn't have to mean spicy. It can be things like cinnamon and turmeric and different things like that. So here at the spice aisle, you can really play with different spices and blends and add them to different foods and meals and try it out and see what you like. If you're kind of a novice at adding spices to food, you can use things like Mrs. Dash, and they have either just like a general table blend or an onion and herb or garlic and herb, or sometimes even ones that they recommend to have on steak, so that they've put some blends of things together for you to kind of help with that if you're not sure what to do with them. Mrs. Dash is a no salt product, so again it's just herbs and spices to really help you add flavor to your foods without adding sodium. There's also an option for something called no salt. There's another brand called Nu-Salt. This uses potassium chloride instead of sodium chloride that can be used for a salt substitute. Some people like the flavor, some people don't. I would caution though, if you do have any heart or kidney issues, I'd recommend talking to your physician before starting to use this, just because of the problems that can happen with too much potassium. Here we are in the fat section. A lot of people ask me, am I supposed to have fat? Am I supposed to have fat-free? And what we really care about is the quality of fat, and we don't want to have fat-free diets. Again, it's just about the kinds that we consume. So here we are with oils next to me like olive oil and avocado oil. I'm all about, again, easy things to remember. These are liquid at room temperatures that you can see, and liquid fats are what's better for our heart than solid. So olive oil, again, canola oil, avocado oil, those are all liquid at room temperature, meaning they're heart healthy. Whereas if you, let's say, cook bacon or you have butter, you have solid fat. When you come back from cooking bacon, the pan is white with solid bacon fat. Those are worse for our heart. Those are the saturated fats. Now, when you look at labels, often it will say total fat, and the 2 fats underneath that are required by law to be listed are saturated and trans fat. Those are the 2 that we try to not have, limit or avoid. An easy way to remember that is the fats that are good for our heart have UN or un in the word. So those are the monounsaturated and the polyunsaturated fats. So let's, for example, say you look at a food item and total fat says 10 grams and saturated and trans say 0 for both. People say, well, where is that fat coming from? Even though they're not listed, it's coming from those heart-healthy unsaturated fats. Here we are in the frozen food section. Specifically, earlier we were talking about whether we can afford fresh produce or if we need some canned or frozen. So these are a bunch of frozen veggies behind me. So again, these are great products that are still very healthy for you, What I would recommend is if you like veggies and they're easy for you to get in, to get the regular frozen veggies where the only ingredient are those vegetables. Sometimes people get the versions that have maybe a sauce on it, like a cheese sauce or butter sauce. There's nothing really wrong with that, but you're going to have added fat and added sodium and different things added to it, whereas if you just bought the frozen veggies that just have veggies as an ingredient, you're getting a more wholesome product that you can add to it, which you would like. So when you are in the frozen section, we also sometimes buy some of our meat or fish here. Sometimes because it's cheaper, maybe it's on sale, things that they haven't sold previously. But one thing we sometimes forget about is to, again, look at the sodium on food labels. We should just kind of assume that everything has sodium until we find out otherwise. So I've got two different kinds of shrimp here. Shrimp, chicken, those are two of the big examples that I always use. So here we have shrimp, both serving size is 4 ounces on the label. This one is uncooked, this one is uncooked, so we're comparing apples to apples. And the sodium in this one is 630 milligrams, this one is 130 milligrams. A lot of times I will spend looking through the grocery store, and for frozen chicken, frozen shrimp, it's very hard to find a food item that is lower in sodium, such as this one, and it's a huge difference, 500 milligram sodium difference. So really start to look at some of these things and try not to get overwhelmed and think you have to revamp your whole eating pattern, but maybe next time you go to the grocery store, pick 5 items that you look at, whether it's you're looking at sodium or fiber or the types of and amounts of fats you're having, and try to just pick out a few things and look at them and see how you're doing and what you could improve on. So here we are in the energy drink section, and I'm sure that many of you consume these. It's a very common thing that I hear from my patients, that they need to stay awake at work or for their kids' activities. So this is something that I want to really talk about, because it's not very safe for us to consume these, and I really encourage people to reduce or cut out their consumption of these. So energy drinks are called ergogenic aids, unlike Gatorade and Powerade. Those are called sports drinks. So ergogenic aids, like energy drinks here, they have often a lot of caffeine and a lot of added sugar, and then a lot of other added things that we don't always know what it does to us long term. The big concern with energy drinks, especially if children consume them, is they're not dosed for children, they're dosed for adults. But also, there's a lot of stuff they put into it that, again, we don't know what it does to us, and they're not regulated, so they can make claims of what these items might do, but they don't have to prove it. So again, I would really encourage people, if you're having, say, 1 or 2 a day, try to get down to 1 a day, and then 1 every other day, and try to reduce the consumption of these, and try to increase your energy by having good, healthy eating and sleeping well and getting adequate fluids, and also getting the physical activity throughout the day. So here we are in another high sugar beverage area, which is pop or soda. A lot of my patients consume a fair amount of this every day, and the reason we want to try to cut back on it is because we don't need added sugar in our diet, and pop or soda adds a lot of added sugar to what we eat each day. So this here we have is how much sugar is in a bottle of pop. I do have patients that say that they can sometimes drink up to 2 liters or more of pop a day. This is how much sugar is in a 2 liter of pop. Others will say, I don't drink that much pop, it's not a huge thing, I only have a can a day. This is how much sugar is in if we have 1 can, not a bottle, just 1 little can of pop a day for a month. It's about 7 cups of sugar. So you can see how it really, really adds up, even if we have a small consumption each day. So it's something that we try to gradually set goals and try to cut back on how much added sugar we have. Cereal is a common breakfast choice for a lot of us, and again, one of the problems with cereal as a breakfast choice sometimes is the added sugar that we sometimes have with these. You can make healthier choices here, but some of the tasty flavors that we all like contribute to, again, some of the added sugar in our diet. So what we want to look for example, Cheerios is a pretty good option. What we want to look for is on the ingredients. We want to look for, again, that whole grain, so 100% whole grain oats or wheat or whatever it is that we're looking for, but also when you look at the label of these, there's usually a fair amount of fiber, which again helps with cholesterol, feeling full, and helps with blood sugars. So again, when you're looking at cereals, try to find options with less sugar, less added sugar, and whole grains and more fiber. So when we think about dairy, we always try to kind of ladder down from where we're at. And what I mean by that is if you're drinking whole milk, try to go down to 2%. If you're drinking 2, try to go down to 1. And if you're drinking 1, try to go down to skim or wherever, again, you feel is realistic for you to go. When we go through all the different types of cow's milk, we're going to be getting the same protein and the same calcium and vitamin D. But as we kind of ladder down to the specifically 1% in skim milk, we're going to have less fat and less calories, which we generally aren't needing. Also in this section, there are alternatives. So if you have lactose intolerance, there's lactose-free milk, and then also things like almond milk and soy milk that you can use. They are sometimes less calories, but they're also often a lot less protein. And so if you don't require to have a milk alternative, cow's milk can be kind of the best option. So you're still getting that calcium and vitamin D, but a fair amount of protein as well to help with building your muscles and keeping your nutrition stores. So one thing we haven't talked about yet is probiotics. Yogurt is a great source of probiotics, and that's a section we're in now. They have live and active cultures that really help with gut health and our overall health in general. When we're looking at yogurt, we like to, as I've said many times before, to look for those that have less added sugar. Sometimes the best option can be to find a Greek yogurt. If you don't like Greek yogurt, that's fine. Just get a traditional yogurt with less added sugar. Generally, you can look at that, find that out by looking at total carbohydrates. The reason that Greek yogurt can be a better option is because it's traditional yogurt that's been strained again, so there's less liquid and therefore more protein and less carbohydrate. So earlier we were in the baked section, now we're in the chip section. We gotta talk about some of our weakness foods as well. Chips happens to be one of my weakness foods, and we don't have to stop eating them, but again, it's kind of about the amount and what kinds that we're having. And so sometimes you can, as you see here, find a lightly salted or reduced sodium chip, or if you're like me, they do sell the smaller packages, not the ones that are out front by the registers, but the bags of chips that they're called like flavor mix, and they have small little bags of chips, so they're pre-portioned or portion sized out for you, so you can still enjoy them, but not continue to eat until the bag is gone.